So for those of you who do not know Dr. Adams, I'm going to introduce him. Dr. Adams leads the Autism and Asperger's Research Program at Arizona State University. He's the president of the Autism Society of Greater Phoenix and president of the Autism Nutrition Center. And Dr. Adams is also chair of the Science Advisory Board of the Neurological Health Foundation. So clearly Dr. Adams is very busy, and we appreciate him taking the time to come on here today and share some information with us. So welcome, Dr. Adams, and thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Denise. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. If any of you missed it, Dr. Adams was on here about a month ago. We did an interview on the work he's doing with microbiota transfer and transplant therapy. It was a really great topic and really good information. So if you missed that, I'm going to put a link here that you can access it, or you can go back through this page's Facebook videos and you can watch it there. I really recommend going and checking it out. But if you're here for today's topic, we're going to talk about Dr. Adams' comprehensive dietary and nutritional intervention, which was a 12-month clinical study. And I'm really excited for you to hear about it because he had a lot of great clinical outcomes, and I'm excited for him to share with you. So Dr. Adams, on that note, I'm going to pass it over to you so you can explain the study and all of its aspects and its results.
Great, thanks so much. So first, I'll just try to give a little bit of an overview. What we did was a very unusual study where we looked at not just one treatment intervention, but we looked at a combination of 6 different treatment interventions, all of which together provide a comprehensive nutritional intervention and comprehensive nutritional support for children with autism. And so we went into this study knowing that each one of these treatments will help some children, often just a little bit, sometimes more for some individuals. But our thinking is that if we could stack these interventions together, that if this one helps a little bit and the next one helps more and the next one helps more, our hope is that all together we can have a lot more benefit. And it makes a lot of sense. If you're deficient in one nutrient like iron, it doesn't help you to give the other nutrients if you're still deficient in that one. And so that was our general thinking. So we'd already done studies of some of these nutrients individually. And so what we wanted to do is put them all together into a 1-year study. And it was a single blind study. So what that means is that we took a group of autism families, some children and some adults with autism, and we randomly assigned half of them to receive the treatment for 1 year and half of them to wait 1 year, not make any changes in their therapies, but to serve as our control group with the promise that at the end of that year, they would then receive all those same therapies. So the families knew if they were in the treatment group or not, but our autism evaluators did not know which group the people we were in. And so that's what we call a single blind design. It's not quite as rigorous as a double blind, where also the participants don't know which group they're in. But one of the big changes we're making is changing the diet. And so if we want to make a major change and have the children switch from eating junk food to eating healthy foods with vegetables and fruits, then the families are going to know about that.
Yeah, they kind of have to be in on that, right? It would be pretty difficult to hide that.
That's right. That's right. So that's the limitation of when we do a diet study. But again, we did the best we could by doing a single blind study. And then from the parents' point of view, the parents give us information about whether or not, basically from an open label point of view, what they think they observe. So we also gather data from the families, and then we also gather blood work and other information as well on the families. So that's sort of the big picture of what we did. So maybe what I can do is just go ahead and describe the 6 different treatments we used first and why we looked at each one.
That sounds great.
So one of the first things we did was looked at a specialized vitamin mineral supplement. We'd done a previous research study, a very large research study with 140 children and adults with autism, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled. We found that after just 3 months, a specialized vitamin mineral supplement that we had developed was able to result in many improvements, huge number of improvements in biochemistry, basically almost every marker we looked at, from oxidative stress to glutathione to neurotransmitters. We saw many, many improvements across the board, improvements in vitamin levels, improvements in mineral levels, lots of great improvements there. And so the thinking is that many children with autism have poor diets to begin with. Many typical children have poor diets. They just aren't getting enough of those vegetables and healthy foods and too much junk food. So, but also there's growing evidence that children with autism need extra amounts of vitamins and minerals. They have more oxidative stress. They have more functional need for a variety of vitamins and minerals. And so that's why we put this all together. And so we used this vitamin mineral supplement that we'd already done a major study with. The next major nutrient we looked at were essential fatty acids. Basically, the two major essential fatty acids are called omega-3 and omega-6. Most people in the US get plenty of omega-6 from plant foods, but most don't get nearly enough from omega-3s. Pretty much the only major source of omega-3s left in most people's diet is from fish. And so if children aren't eating 1 to 2 servings of fish a week, then they're probably low in omega-3s. And several previous studies had shown children with autism generally were lower in omega-3s. And there have been quite a few studies showing some minor effect from adding omega-3s to the diet. And some meta-analyses showed that altogether they had some benefit. But the benefits were somewhat small. And part of the reason is that it takes about 4 months of taking fish oil before levels peak in your body. And most of the previous studies had been done for too short a period of time. It typically only been done 2 months, so you didn't have a chance for fish oil levels to reach the full level. And secondly, their doses we think were too low. And so we used relatively high doses in our study, and in general, very well tolerated. We know that we have to go to high doses to improve heart health. We need to go up to about 4 grams a day. And in our study, we were using of order 1 to 2 grams a day. So still very safe levels, but much higher than people had used in most of the other studies. Other major nutrients we looked at, we included Epsom salts in the form of an Epsom salt bath, because Epsom salts are magnesium sulfate. So not only are they a good form of magnesium, but also quite a few studies by our groups and others showed one of the biggest nutritional problems children with autism have is low levels of sulfate. Sulfate is the 4th most common mineral in your body. It's important for detoxifying your neurotransmitters. It's important for lubricating the GI tract. It plays a lot of important roles, and many children with autism are low in it. And it's been shown that Epsom salt baths are a great way for sulfate to easily be absorbed into the body.
And who doesn't love a bath? Like, that's the easiest way, right? That's an easy one. There's probably not much fighting going on that one. So that's great.
Yeah, very easy compliance. You don't have to worry about the taste. You just sit in a warm bath for 20 minutes or so.
Love that.
And then the next ingredient we added was carnitine. Carnitine is a substance which your body can make to a limited extent, but some studies have shown that children with autism have low levels of carnitine, and carnitine is very important for mitochondrial function. We had done a previous study showing when we gave relatively high amounts of carnitine in a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, it improved autism functioning across the board. And then there was a later study where they went to twice the dose we did, and they found even more benefit, and after 6 months. So again, good evidence that some children with autism had impaired mitochondrial function. Carnitine is needed to transport fuel into the mitochondria and to transport waste out of it. So very, very good reason to give it. Yeah. 5th treatment, we involved looking at digestive enzymes. There have been several major studies. The last one done at Harvard Medical School with 199 children with autism. And what they did is they did endoscopies on these children. And as part of the endoscopy, they measure the amount of digestive enzymes that are produced in the gut. And they found that children with autism often produced low amounts of certain digestive enzymes, especially those for digesting sugars and carbohydrates, and especially the sugar in milk called lactose. So they're lactose intolerant because they're lacking the enzyme or they have low amounts of the enzyme needed to digest that sugar. So we gave the children a comprehensive digestive enzyme that helped not just with digesting milk sugar, but also all carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And then finally, the most important thing we think, or one of the most important features, was putting the children on a healthy diet that's allergen-free. So many of the children started the study on poor diets. A typical diet might be chicken nuggets and French fries and other junk food, and switching them from that to healthy diets, rich in vegetables, rich in protein, some fruits, limiting carbohydrates, limiting junk food, limiting sugars. And then also avoiding common allergens, so avoiding gluten, dairy products, and soy. And so that was the hardest part of the study for the families to implement, and that's why we do it last. But we do think it's very important. And some of the children were on good diets to begin with, but many were not. So we want to emphasize the word healthy, because it's not going from eating Oreos to eating gluten-free Oreos, but it's going from eating Oreos to eating broccoli and spinach and carrots and healthy things.
Right.
So that healthy part we think is important.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. So that's basically the 6 major ingredients that were in our study. What we did is we added each one sequentially. So we started off with a vitamin mineral supplement, did that by itself for 30 days. We can see the effects of just that. And then we went ahead and we added other nutrients. So then we added in the fish oil, waited 30 days, and we added in the Epsom salt baths. And then we slowly, steadily added in the other ingredients. So over time, we could see how the children improved and get some sense of if there was a problem with the supplement, then we'd know to remove it. And also if we were seeing benefit at some point, we get some sense of what it might be due to. So it's not perfect because, again, some treatments can take a few months to show benefit, but often we could see benefit quickly from the start of the treatment.
Right. And it's kind of complicated because there aren't really any studies out there like this one. That's one of the reasons why I think it truly is such a, a groundbreaking study, because it's a comprehensive study. You added so many things and they sort of compound on each other and they stack on each other. So that's a benefit, but also I'm sure a little bit of a downside, because sometimes it's hard to tell what was working because it compounded on the other thing, or if it would have just worked as well in isolation. So even though that's a benefit, I think it probably was a little bit of a complication as well. Would you say?
Absolutely. So it is a limitation of the study. We can't absolutely say which treatment was the best or which part was the best. We could say that overall, the treatments were very helpful. And I'll mention some thoughts from families as to what treatments they thought were most beneficial. Right. But also because we saw most of the benefits in the first 3 months, it lets us know that really the treatments we started the first 2 to 3 months were probably the most important ones, since that's when most of the benefit occurred.
Well, plus if you think about just in life in general, none of us just eat a ingredient, right? And we don't just function in isolation. These things are all happening all at one time. And when we're eating a meal, not just one ingredient or what have you. So it really sort of mimics what's happening in nature anyways.
That's right. And this is really meant to mimic what's really done in practice, that many physicians, many nutritionists will use a comprehensive approach. They may be able to determine if a child's missing a particular nutrient, but our sense is we wanted to give safe amounts of all the major nutrients through providing comprehensive support, so that if children had deficiencies in any one area, we should be filling those pretty well. We're lucky that there's a pretty wide window between giving a certain amount of most vitamins and minerals before running into any adverse effects. And by adding them in sequentially, we could then see if there, in the rare cases a problem did occur, we'd know what it was due to and we could eliminate that. So there are a few cases where a child may not be able to tolerate any one of the treatments. One of the exceptions is the Epsom salt baths. Everyone tolerated that. That was fine.
That was easy.
Yeah, so that was easy. But almost all of the supplements were very well tolerated by almost all of the children, but never 100%, except for the Epsom salt baths. Even the healthy diet, some children don't want to give up their pizza or their candy. And so that caused some tantruming and caused some irritability. And so we have to take that into account as well.
Sure.
But overall, what we found is that very low rate of adverse effects. We saw that the diet, implementing this comprehensive set of treatments over 12 months was very safe. We did blood work to measure kidney function, liver function, other basic measures of blood count, and overall body chemistry. It all looked very good. So no health concerns there. And as we expected, but it's good to prove that too. We saw that vitamin levels went up quite a bit. We saw great increases in levels of omega-3 fatty acid. So we saw good improvements in the things we expected. But then most importantly, let's talk about some of the overall improvements that really across the board in all of the autism symptoms. We saw improvements in speech. We saw improvements in social interaction. We saw reductions of repetitive behaviors. So in the core symptoms of autism, we saw some good benefits. It's not huge, that for some children, there might be no effect. For some children, there might be a modest effect. And for some children, there was a major effect. But overall, well over 80% of the families reported some degree of benefit, and very, very rare that there was an adverse effect from any one of the problems.
Which is amazing. I mean, you know, that's to me, I mean, this is fantastic. So I'm excited for you to share some of the specific results, because I'm getting itchy in my chair because I just want you to blurt it out. But I love the way you're getting us to it. I feel like I'm watching one of those movies where I know the good part's coming and I get too excited. So go ahead and finish.
So one of the core tests that we did was we measured intellectual function with an IQ test. And so that's a very standardized test. You just administer to the child. They have to answer a number of questions. And our evaluator, who's an expert trained in giving these IQ tests, gave it to both the children in the treatment group and the children not in the treatment group. In the children not in the treatment group, there was no change in IQ as we expected. The children in the treatment group, on average, had a 7-point gain in nonverbal IQ, which is just huge.
That is amazing. I mean, that is so cool.
That is just an amazing increase from such an incredibly safe intervention. And again, some children gain more, some gain less, but overall, that's very, very solid data. You can't fake performance on an IQ test. Now, can we say the children were intellectually better, or just they were better behaved and better performed? All we can say is they had better performance on those IQ tests. And so that's very, very exciting to see.
Yeah.
One of the other major improvements is we looked at the developmental age of these children. So we used a 50-minute interview with the families by one of our trained evaluators. And so we go through a huge number of questions about abilities of the child in many different areas in terms of language and writing and social interaction and daily living skills, community living skills. And so overall, children with autism are developmentally delayed. So the average age of children in our study was about 10 years, but their developmental age was only about age 5. So they were very impaired compared to typical children. So over the course of 12 months, our non-treatment group gained about 4 months of development. So they made some progress, but they're making progress much slower than their peers. So over 12 months, they gained 4 months. Right. Our treatment group gained about 18 months of development.
So cool.
Catching up to their peers.
That is amazing.
It wasn't even making the same progress. It began catching up just across the board. It was just so exciting to see that in language, in social interaction, in emotion regulation, and just overall, just doing much better. And not just doing better in their behaviors, but overall, the parents were reporting the children were happier, that they were just better able to function, and just generally happier children. And what more can we ask for?
Yeah, who doesn't want happier children, right? And, you know, we know all the struggles that are out there with autism and some of the parents that they're struggling with. So just, I mean, an increase in just overall happiness is just that in itself is amazing. So just the increase in developmental delay by 18 months is just astounding for something that was just a safe and what really should be what most people are treating in the first place, was with nutrients and healthy foods. And so, you know, without a medication or some dramatic treatment and baths, you know, I mean, this is so cool that we had seen such amazing results from something that seems very simple.
Right, and we have the blood work to back it up that shows, yes, nutrient levels did improve from these treatments. And so that's very, very promising to see.
So cool.
Overall, the families reported that most of the benefits occurred during the first 3 months. And again, the first 2 treatments that we used were a vitamin mineral supplement and a fish oil supplement. So it's no surprise that when we asked the families to rate their estimate, and again, just their estimate of which treatments were most beneficial, it was those 2 that they rated highest, our customized vitamin mineral supplement and the fish oil supplement that we use. So those 2, very, very promising.
Well, it's pretty amazing what the body can do when we can support its own ability to function the way it's supposed to, right? So with things like nutrients and the things that are required for all those biochemical reactions to happen, for the body to grow, for the brain to develop, for the neurons to function. So when we can support that with nutrients and provide it with those things and maybe a little bit extra because some of these kiddos are a little deficient, it's pretty cool what we can see the body do for itself.
That's right. That's right. By giving these vitamins and minerals, these are cofactors that help the body make everything, including, for example, neurotransmitters. So if someone's low in serotonin, you can give them an SSRI, or you can give them the nutrients that they need to make their own. Yeah. And so we think that's just a better way to start. It's very safe, and we think it's a good, reasonable way to start treatment. And then consider pharmaceuticals later if you need to.
Right.
The third treatment that we saw that was also families reported as being beneficial was the healthy diet. There was a little blip at the end of the study, that there were some improvements there at the end. Again, it seemed that adding on that healthy diet, avoiding those common allergens, seemed to be helpful for some of the children as well. The limitation is that having 100% compliance with those diets is difficult. So not all the children complied very well. So I think we might have seen even more improvement if the families were successful. In some cases, the families put the whole family on the diet, because it's pretty hard to give your child, vegetables and rice while you're eating a pizza in front of them.
Right.
Okay. It's not going to work out.
That's not going to work out for anybody.
Right. And some of the families said, yeah, when I went on the healthy diet with my child, I felt better too.
Isn't that funny how that happens?
Right. Yeah. So some of those same nutritional challenges might run in the families as well. So
sure.
These are good treatments for the children, but also for the parents.
Yeah, but I can see how that would have been the challenging part of the process here. Making dietary changes is difficult, especially with the young ones. And if they have sensory issues or are picky eaters, and it just kind of compounds the difficulty and making the family change the way that they're used to eating. That's hard. That's hard.
Okay. I'm getting a quick hug from my daughter.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Kim.
I love you, Daddy.
I love
you. Love that support.
Say hi.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, thanks, Kim.
You're welcome, Dad.
She's a sweetie.
What a sweet, that's so cute.
Yeah. So let's see. So I gave you some of the highlights there of what we saw. In general, the treatments were very well tolerated. It was interesting that there was one case of 2 brothers who did not tolerate a vitamin mineral supplement. They actually seemed to get a little worse from it. And later we realized these were the 2 children out of the whole study who had the worst nutritional status. That when we measured their levels of vitamins and minerals, they were the worst. And so it was probably just too high a dose for them. Even when they went to a low dose, it was too challenging. I think they probably had some additional metabolic problems. What's interesting is that one of them also had pica. So he was eating non-food items, sand, dirt, newspaper, that kind of thing. That's usually a sign of a nutritional deficiency. Right. He'd had this severe pica for years. So even though he couldn't tolerate our vitamin mineral supplement or the other supplements, the family then did put him on a healthy diet. Within 1 week of being on the healthy diet, he's completely cured of his severe pica.
Oh, man.
No longer had these cravings for eating sand and dirt and newspaper. It was amazing.
Gosh.
And so again, it's just such a healthy diet is just such an important way to start for children.
That's why I'm so happy that you included that in your study and didn't just use the supplements, which are great and they help boost some of those deficiencies and get things running. But what I try to tell my families is that if you can't out supplement a bad diet. If the baseline diet is a bunch of chemicals and junk and artificially flavored things and allergens and things that are going to irritate the system and, stress the detoxification system, burden the whole system, those other treatments are not going to be as effective. We've got to get at least baseline, at a good place and stop bringing in the toxins and support nutritionally. But, supplementing, first of all, can be, necessary if we're not able to get in those foods at first, because I don't know any child that goes from 0 pizza and chicken nuggets to boom, eating veggies and healthy foods. It doesn't quite happen that quickly. So, sort of filling those nutritional gaps with supplementing is great. And now we have all this evidence, thankfully, for a lot of your work contributed to that. So now we have a lot of scientific evidence supporting the use of nutrients for treatments. That's awesome.
Sure. Yeah, and again, we encourage many of the families in our study to consult with our nutritionists and get some individualized training on how to implement the diet, as well as just the general guidance so they could do it on their own. And I think that helped a lot of families. So I think everyone would benefit from at least one chat, one hour discussion with the nutritionist, just to see, can they improve their diet? Are there any hidden gaps? So I think that's very important.
It can get pretty complicated pretty quick. A lot of people just we're misinformed and we're undereducated on how the body actually works and what part nutrition and food takes in that. And the things that we call food that really aren't necessarily food. They're more a toxic chemical full of coloring and flavoring and artificial ingredients. So just getting educated on which foods aggravate and which foods support is really beneficial to most of these families, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just a question of getting the healthy food in, but avoiding the unhealthy ones.
Absolutely.
The other, so I mentioned one of our very interesting case studies, which was on a child with severe pica. We had 2 other very interesting case studies. And so one of them was a young man who for several years had been unable to urinate on his own. His neurologist, his urologist were very puzzled by this. They couldn't figure it out. So the poor man had to be catheterized several times a day. Very painful, very uncomfortable. I can't imagine doing that one time, let alone several times a day. And the interesting thing is that as soon as he went on a dairy-free diet, within a few days of starting the dairy-free diet, he was cured. He was able to urinate on his own. He suddenly regained that ability. So it was astounding. But then one day, someone by mistake gave him a bowl of ice cream, and he lost the ability to urinate for several days and then regained it.
Wow.
And then a little while later, someone gave him a slice of cheese pizza. Again, he lost the ability to urinate for several days and then regained it. So that's just an incredibly powerful example of how a food allergy, which was never suspected, was causing this unusual problem. And the mother was just ecstatic, saying how much better this made the young man's life. He was no longer constantly touching his genitals, no longer in pain, suddenly being a lot more social with people, just so much happier.
I guess so. It's funny that's an extreme response, but it goes to show you that, making these minor changes in your dietary intake and getting rid of allergens and isolating which things are aggravating or not, we could see a lot of different symptoms and behaviors relieved.
Yes, absolutely. And then we had one other very interesting case study. A young girl who was age 9 when she started her study. She was age 6 when she had begun to develop obesity and had begun to lose a lot of her muscle strength, that she was no longer able to walk up and down stairs. If she was lying on the floor, she could not stand up on her own. She could not step into the family van. That one step was too big for her. And if she walked, she could walk maybe a quarter mile before she'd be exhausted, and they'd wheel her around in a wheelchair. And so what was so interesting is that when they started carnitine supplement, then soon she began having much more energy. She began skipping around the house. She had so much energy She began going on long walks. She could climb up into the family van. She could climb upstairs. She could get up off the floor. She started going on long walks. She learned to ride a bike. And the family just put the wheelchair into storage. It was just amazing.
I mean, talk about life changing, right? With the one ingredient, supporting the body, giving it the nutrients it needs to provide it the energy that it needs. That's just amazing.
Yeah, and it was so interesting because we really nailed down why this occurred and why carnitine was so beneficial for her in particular, in that the only sources of carnitine in the human diet are either from beef products, from cows, or to a much lesser extent, pork from pigs. Mm-hmm. So she had refused to eat those foods for years, so she wasn't getting them. But also your body should have an ability to make carnitine, but it seems that for many people, it's a limited ability to make it. Mm-hmm. So when we measured her carnitine levels, they were low. And then after, they were among the lowest in our study. And then at the end of treatment, they were above that of the typical children. So we managed to improve her carnitine levels by the carnitine supplement that we gave, and just seeing these huge improvements in energy. So I think it's a great clue that if a child has low energy level, low muscle strength, and especially if they're avoiding beef or pork, which are great sources of carnitine, and it's probably a very good clue she could benefit from a carnitine supplement.
And there's a lot of kids that really resist meat. Yeah, there's a lot of kids that have a hard time with the texture of meat, and they just really don't care for it. So I could see this is probably a common problem, kids not getting enough carnitine.
Yeah, and some people mistakenly think that chicken or fish might also be healthy, and they are in some ways, but they don't have any carnitine in them. And so that's a big problem. And so that's why, again, we think a varied diet, varied types of protein, couple servings of beef a week, or a carnitine supplement are really good benefits. What's important to remember too is that although carnitine is important for muscle function, it's really important for your mitochondria as a whole, producing energy for the whole body. Yeah. And the biggest energy consuming part of the body is the brain. So this young lady also had some pretty significant intellectual impairments, we think, due to the carnitine. And over the course of 12 months, I can't say that we saw too much improvement there. But again, perhaps if it was caught earlier, there might have been more improvements. Yeah. So again, just checking for these nutritional deficiencies early on and trying to treat them, we think makes a lot of good sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing outcome. That's just amazing.
Yeah, the one mistake we made with carnitine in our study is that we know that acetyl L-carnitine is the form that's actually active in the body. But our first study had used L-carnitine, which we now know is better absorbed. But this study that I mentioned used the acetyl form. We discovered it was not as well absorbed. And so now we're recommending people use the L-carnitine form.
Oh, okay.
Also, we've heard a few reports of children who don't tolerate fish oil very well, that within a week of starting fish oil, they have a severe behavioral reaction. Pretty rare, maybe a couple % of children with autism. We found that's almost always due to a carnitine deficiency. So that's why we always recommend having some carnitine before you start fish oil, just to help the body with processing that.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. So that's overall just a big picture of what we saw, that roughly over 85% of the families felt that there was good benefit from the study. We're not saying it's a cure by any means. There were a few families who did exceptionally well. And there were a few families who didn't see much benefit. But overall, most families saw some reasonable benefit from a very safe, fairly inexpensive approach, generally well tolerated by almost everyone.
So cool. So great. And a few of those were some pretty extreme results. So, if the study had been larger and there was more participants, maybe we would have seen a couple more those are almost miraculous in nature. When you talk about those kind of changes, and the change in those people's life and the increase in their quality of life, just by simply giving them the nutrients that their body needed that they just weren't aware of. So such a simple approach, dietary and nutritional support, but also at the same time, just not well known. You know, it surprises me how many doctors and clinicians that I talk to or work with that they didn't feel that there was enough research or evidence to support nutrition as treatment. And now we're seeing that change. And of course, partly from you. Thank you very much for all the research that you've contributed. And we're seeing it more and more now, but I really wish there was a way to like fast forward and amplify so that everybody could start here as a first line therapy, start here with nutrition and nutrients and supporting what the body is supposed to be doing, and help that way first. And then, you know, other treatments. Because in my opinion, and I've worked with quite a few speech therapists and ABA therapists, if the body is not being supported and we're having underlying biochemical imbalances that are creating these problems and maybe neurological function and detoxification and those kind of things, we're not going to see the same outcomes from that treatment as we would have if we supported the underlying biochemistry first. So things like this and this study really support that if we can boost the nutritional needs and sort of offset some of those biochemical imbalances, it's amazing what we can see, right?
Yeah,
So cool.
yeah. No, I think it's very important. An analogy I sometimes give is if you have a car that won't run, you can call a mechanic in to do a huge overhaul, or you can check the gas tank and just add gas. And for many of these kids, they're just running on empty. They just don't have the nutrients that they need. So you can give them a lot of psychiatric medications, but it's not going to make up for missing iron or missing calcium or missing certain vitamins. So let's make sure they have the good nutrients that they need, that we know their body needs to run. That's where we have all the good science, where we've known for decades nutrition is important, vitamins and minerals are important, and now we have more studies showing that many, not all, but many children with autism have significant nutritional deficiencies. But it's very varied. It's very expensive to test for each one of those. We could do it in our research studies, but most people can't. Many of the tests are just not available for many of these nutrients. So you could spend $500 to $1,000 testing the level of every vitamin and every mineral, or you can just give $50 vitamin mineral supplement and see if there's benefit. And I think that's a much simpler way to go, and probably a much more reliable test as well.
Right. Yeah. And same with making those dietary changes, simple, small changes, little by little, and then they all compound on each other and getting those nutrients in. And, you know, that whole saying, you are what you eat, kind of holds to be true. We sort of, I think we've kind of lost our way a little bit with all these new quick and easy processed food and the drive-through and all these fast foods. And we're literally poisoning our little children and not giving them those basic nutrients that their brain and nervous system need to develop. So we're seeing a lot of struggles, and not just in autism, I think just across the board in the standard American diet in general. People are struggling with all kinds of chronic illnesses. And I think that the very baseline is because, well, they're simply not getting the nutrition that they need and those baseline nutrients that they need for biological function. So if we can start educating folks and getting this information out there, the faster the better. And so actually that leads up to a great point. So this month I'll be opening registration for my online Nutrition Intervention for Autism and ADHD course. So that's coming up here in the next couple of weeks. Everyone keep your eye open for that open registration tab, because I really feel that, and I think this study supports it completely, that if we can start with nutrition first and support that underlying biochemistry just from the very, very basics, even if we're doing other treatments, it'll amplify those other treatments. We can only improve if we have that set stable base, right? So you guys are all welcome to join us in that group. That's coming up. You'll see registration pop up here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be doing some things leading up to that. So that'll be very exciting. But until then, I'm going to give you a couple of questions that some parents had wrote in, because I definitely tag your research quite often in all of my posts and my blogs and everything else. So people that follow me are already pretty familiar with some of your work. But one of the parents had asked me, and I thought I'd give you the floor on this one because you would know better than I. What was your reasoning behind the order of which you implemented some of your treatments? And I know you said you saved diet for last because that one seemed to be probably the most intense and hard to do. But what was the reasoning behind the stack of how you treated?
Yeah, we think the order is not too critical in most cases, but there are a few things. So as I mentioned, about 2% or so of children with autism seem to be very carnitine deficient and have a very severe behavioral reaction to fish oil within a week of taking it. And so that's why we started with our vitamin mineral supplement, which has modest amounts of L-carnitine in it, not enough to prevent a severe deficiency. And we started with that because we knew from our other study that it was going to be beneficial to some degree. And then we wanted to see what was the additional benefit of giving other treatments. Then we added in fish oil next because there's quite a few other studies on that. But the order of the other nutrients was not too critical. So we could have done Epsom salts. We could have done carnitine before Epsom salts or vice versa. Both are common treatments and both are important. Digestive enzymes, we waited until near the end of changing the diet, simply because we wanted to first give the nutrients, give the digestive enzymes that we knew many of these children needed. Now, it could be that by doing that, then we had less benefit from an allergy-free diet. So for example, if you're consuming milk products and you don't tolerate dairy very well, you can go on a dairy-free diet, or you can take a digestive enzyme to help you digest it better. So you could have done those in either order. If we'd done the diet before the digestive enzymes, we might have seen more improvement from the diet and less from the digestive enzyme. So again, we could have varied the order in which we do those. So it was really, the main reason was just for putting the diet last, because we knew that was would be the hardest for families to implement. And some of them just were not able to get very good compliance with it.
Okay. So another question someone asked is if you have any other new nutritional studies in the books. Now, I know that you're quite busy with your research on the microbiota transplants, but is there anything in the works for another maybe larger study?
Yeah. So we have done, we're currently doing several studies on microbiota transplant, and there's a strong connection because our microbiota make several key nutrients, several key vitamins for our body, and they also produce butyrate, an essential nutrient for the cells that line our gut. And I think I forgot to mention that we did see about a 30% improvement in gut symptoms from our nutritional intervention study. So it goes both ways, that by improving the gut microbiome, we can improve the body's functioning, and by improving body's nutrition, we can somewhat help with gut symptoms.
So that's interesting. So you did help with gut symptoms, and there wasn't a probiotic introduced in this study, correct?
No. The reason we didn't do a probiotic is that at the time there hadn't been any research studies that really convinced me that probiotic was necessarily going to be beneficial, and we didn't know which ones. So I wanted to wait until we had more research, and also I felt, knowing what we did about microbiota, that we suspected people really needed a comprehensive nutritional supplement. Nowadays, there are some probiotics out there, and we are actually in the process of planning a new probiotic study. So that will be something we're in the planning stages for. And we hope that will be another big study. And then we've introduced a streamlined version of our nutritional protocol. And we hope to do a study on that as well sometime in the next year.
Okay. And is there a way for parents to sign up to participate in that study?
We don't have, we aren't advertising either of those yet. They're still in the planning stages, but in several months from now, we'll start advertising them. Cool.
Very cool. Is there anything else that you want to share with us?
I think we've really covered it. People can go to our website to learn more. They want to see our general recommendations on nutritional supplements. They can just go to adamsautismresearch.com, and that provides a good overview of many of our recommendations for nutraceuticals and other areas.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. We really do appreciate it. And we hope to have you back soon to talk some more about, you are definitely a database of knowledge. We can definitely pick at that brain, I think, a few more times and get some more good info out of there. We appreciate your work, and I definitely appreciate your time, Dr. Adams.
Thanks very much, Denise.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.